Hi everyone, welcome to another Create webinar, and I think we've got a real treat in store this evening. But before I get on to introducing our presenters for this evening, I just want to recognise that we're on Aboriginal land. Most of us are in Australia. I'm on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and I want to pay respects to Elders past, present and emerging, and recognise that this land was never ceded. So tonight we've got such an exciting opportunity to delve deeply into Connect Ed and the work that's been done for English as second language learners. And I'll introduce Zoe and Victoria in a second. But before I do, I just want to welcome everyone and just remind everyone that Create is here for you. It's an organisation that works in arts and creativity and how that's applied in education, health and wellbeing. If you want to join Create, I'm sure Anna can drop the link in the chat. Also, if you want to catch up with any of the webinars that we've done, and we've done pushing 30 webinars over the last couple of years on really interesting different topics. Just go to our website or our YouTube channel, and I'm sure Anna can drop that in the chat as well. And it'll give you a sense of the opportunities that you can catch up with. Especially, we did a panel on where the arts and creativity are in this election discussion, which is pretty much nowhere, but we had some really insightful thoughts from a really great range of speakers. So you can get 2-minute grabs of that on our YouTube site as well, which you can use in your own organisation, or you can use to advocate as well. Anyway, enough of the plugs. I want to kind of introduce tonight the presenters, and I want to first of all say that Zoe and Victoria have been in this space and working away pretty much quietly for so long, and I'm so glad that they're not being quiet this evening. I'm so glad that Zoe and Victoria are bringing us their fantastic work, which emerges from the Sydney Theatre Company and University of Sydney Connect Ed and School Drama Program. Probably most of you know Zoe and Victoria, but Zoe Hogan is the Director of Education and Community Partnerships at Sydney Theatre Company, and Dr. Victoria Campbell is a lecturer in the creative arts at the University of Sydney. They are both passionate about the arts and creativity. I've worked with both of them in different ways, and they are amazing individuals, and I'm so glad they can be here tonight. So it is our pleasure, Robin Ewing and my pleasure as directors of Create, to introduce Zoe and Victoria and take it away.
Thank you, Michael. That's fantastic. Always very complimentary. I think Zoe and I would also like to say that you put it beautifully, that we are these people who have jobs in various contexts of Sydney University and Sydney Theatre Company. But Zoe and I also have a great love of story and come from a practice of storytelling. Zoe, playwright, me, a storyteller, and that also really informs our work. So we just wanted to get that up front. Zoe and I were having a chat this afternoon and thought it might be good, because of the context of what we're talking about today, is to really just sort of set that up front. And Zoe, did you have something to say about that?
Well, thank you, Michael, for that lovely introduction. And thank you also to Robin and Anna, who are supporting this webinar behind the scenes. Yeah, I would just also echo that from Victoria, and also to say hello to everyone who's joined us this evening, and many familiar names, if not faces as well. What we wanted to share with you this evening is really, we thought we just want to give you an insight into this program that we've talked about in the past, but it's hard to kind of share the sense of what happens in a connected workshop. So we're going to try a few different things tonight to share maybe a little sense of that with you. And the first of those things is actually a short video that I believe Anna is going to play for us before we get into the presentation.
All right, let's see if the technology will do what we want. We can bend it to our will. Just making sure share sound is on. And here we go.
Here at Ptsd, we offer job search and English literacy courses. The C program is Skills for Education and Employment. It's a program that improves English, computer, and job searching skills.
Connected is a program that uses drama approaches to improve literacy, particularly with people who are learning English as an additional language. And a lot of our participants are migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers.
The Connected program is a little bit different from other language programs. It's a process of getting used to a different way of learning. We also start at a level where everyone can participate, so nobody feels left out in our learning environment.
Drama is a really engaging way of working with students regardless of their English language levels, and that's because we're using our body language, facial expressions, and other ways of making meaning that are not just using English.
I like the drama classes a lot. Everyone has fun. We are very happy and speak more English.
When teacher you write your lesson, after that you speak English.
In the beginning, they were a little bit nervous, but they all start to have fun because they're developing their confidence. And I see a lot of the shyer students in normal class now. They are more willing to answer, and I don't think I've seen them so engaged in class like that.
I'm not scared to make mistakes in English. My teacher and friends help me. I want to learn more every day.
حبينا المدرسة والتيشر، تعلمنا إنجليزي وتعلمنا الحب الواحد يحب الثاني، بالك عائلة واحدة إحنا كلنا، والحمد لله والشكر يعني زينين.
Going to see a show today is an added bonus, so they can see actors on stage telling stories in a way that is connected to the way that we're telling stories in the classroom.
I am very happy to see the show because I love you the drama.
Everyone's here. It is good day.
Out of Connected, we see so many different positive results. They start using more complex adjectives. They start using longer sentences. The other benefit is that students start to see their own creative potential. They start to imagine their future possibilities. That's one of the really wonderful things that Connected enhances, is it develops the whole person.
Before, they were very much reliant on a teacher-centred view where I stand up and facilitate the lesson, but now they're more willing to help each other and work together to get the answers and communicate more in English.
Drama classes help me with my speaking and listening. I'm more confident and very happy.
The Connected program has been such a worthwhile experience because the students have got so much out of it, and it's been great watching them grow. Here at Ptsd, we offer job.
Thank you, Anna. That was perfect.
Great.
All right. That hopefully gives you a little bit of probably a historical view into Connected pre-COVID. Seeing so many people squished into a room with no masks suddenly seems odd to look at. But first of all, just for those of you who are joining us tonight and might not have heard about this program before or how it works, we just wanted to begin with a bit of an overview. So as you saw in that short video, it is a drama and literacy program for adults who are learning English as an additional language, and often that means that we're working with migrant and refugee communities across Sydney. And it has really grown out of the school drama program, which is a long-term collaboration between the University of Sydney and Sydney Theatre Company, thanks to the wonderful Professor Emerita Robin Ewing. It's really been a program that combines drama and literacy in primary school classrooms. And both Victoria and I and many other teaching artists on that program really had firsthand experience of seeing how students who were responding to creative and embodied ways of approaching literacy and English, particularly students who were learning English as an additional language, were having really great leaps in their learning in that school drama program. And that kind of led to an interest in what's going on there for those learners. And that led to piloting school drama in intensive English centres, which is where high school age students who may have recently arrived in Australia undertake intensive English language learning before moving to mainstream high schools. And so over the years, these experiences kept kind of accumulating and led to Victoria and I piloting some of these drama-based approaches in adult language learning contexts in 2016. And we've really been working on this program quite consistently ever since. Do you have anything to add to that, Victoria?
I think you've said it beautifully. I think
Thank you. And it goes without saying that we have, as you saw in that video, we have worked with some incredible partners in this space. So as a theatre company and a university, we have some expertise in drama approaches and creativity, but it's really been through collaborating with teachers and counsellors and volunteers at staff at a range of organisations across Sydney and also coming up in Armidale, that we've really been able to develop the program and learn about what it does actually have to offer in people's lives. And that incidentally is where the name of the program came from. So the more that we discussed with participants what their experiences were doing these drama and literacy workshops, a lot of the feedback we got was about a sense of social connection with each other and also connection to the story that we were exploring together. And yeah, that is why Connected is called Connected. And just without going into nitty-gritty details, generally we work across 6 or 7 weeks. We'll deliver weekly drama workshops, and it depends a lot on the context that we're working in. So if it's Asylum Seekers Centre, it might have more of a casual drop-in nature. If it's at an organisation like MTC Australia, which you saw in the video, it takes place in a more formal learning context. And this slide is just an attempt to show where the program has been delivered. And again, working with those partner organisations is a really important part of reaching the communities who have responded to the program so positively. I tried to get Campbelltown on the map and it's off the map, but that red marker gives you an indication of the direction it's in. Victoria, would you like to talk a little bit about process-based drama?
I'd be more than happy to. Thank you, Zoe. So essentially, our work in Connected is based on the concept of process drama, and we call it process-based drama. And essentially, process drama, for those who don't know, and I know there's probably a lot of drama practitioners here, but essentially it is exploring a theme or a topic or an idea over a period of time. And in our case with Connected, that is a story. And we'll talk about the stories that we use in a minute. Exploring that through improvisational activity and drama strategies throughout the 6 weeks. And I think the emphasis on that is really on the process, not end product. And it's the spontaneous, imaginative responses that imbue the drama processes and the drama experiences of the participants with deep meaning. And we'll talk more about that a bit later too. I think also too, this concept, there's no right or wrong. We really allow for that concept to be really driving a lot of the work we do in the drama. Whilst we're working within the drama processes, we release from the focus on having to get something right. So again, it's on the process, not end product. Having said that, we will be talking about something where we do end up with some written end product that belongs to everybody in the drama, but I jump ahead here. So that's process drama, and I think, you know, we are building on all the research that has gone before us, as you can see in these slides. And Zoe, did you want to talk to these points that you've put here on the slide?
I guess there, as many of the people who are watching this know, there's a really impressive body of research that talks to the impact of using drama in education spaces. And specifically, there's some really interesting research about how it can work in a language learning context. And like Victoria mentioned, with often in a language learning context, I know this from my own experience, there is a real focus on right and wrong and getting grammatical rules right and pronunciation. And I think what process-based drama can offer that space is a sense of joy and play and intrinsic motivation to communicate in the language that you're learning. So what we hope to see through using imaginative story is that the participants' interest and engagement in the story builds to such a degree that there's a really natural instinct to communicate, and that can, as this research, some of the research that Erica Ptsd has done in this space talks about how that can help overcome language anxiety, which I think is, I don't want to make a generalization, but is definitely present in spaces where we're working with adult language learners as well. Yeah. So yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about how we approach this in Connected. And as I mentioned before, the program has really evolved out of school drama, where quality children's literature kind of forms the pretext for the drama experiences over 7 weeks in the classroom. So reading a little bit of a text and diving into it using drama strategies over those 7 weeks. And that's something that, as teaching artists on the school drama program, we facilitated and can see how much engagement that brings, like that you have so much dramatic tension over a period of time. And so in Connected, we've kind of built on this approach, but using other stories that are myths and folk tales and legends. And maybe Victoria, do you want to talk specifically to that?
Yeah. So Zoe and I have a great love of story, and similarly to the school drama program, where they use often, and it can be not always, but generally, a printed text. We have found that the stories that we use come from the rich source of the mythical, the folktale that have been told way before the printed text. And there's something, and we'll talk about the various stories that we use. There's something in those stories that participants relate to, in that they have universal themes regardless of the background in which you come from or the culture in which you come from. They have archetypal characters. There's a lovely distancing because they're very ancient. A lot of these tales have been told for millennia on the lips of storytellers and passed on and moved through borders and found new life in other cultures where they might have started in one and then found another way in another culture or country. And so there's this lovely ancient quality that just seems to be imbued in these stories that seems to do a lot of the work for us. But it is the archetype and the universal themes that run through these stories that we have found have been very engaging. And it's the distancing, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. It's this distancing that really allows for more improvisational responses and more imaginative responses, which is what we're always seeking in the drama. And I think, this quote that we've got here from Levo and Ritz, which we really like, is that oral story, these stories come from the oral storytelling traditions, that they're soft and they're malleable and they bend and they breathe and they move and they react or they respond to the needs of the community. And I think that's what we have found with these stories, that we make pretexts of them and they serve as the basis for the different drama experiences that we have. But as Zoe said so eloquently somewhere else, and I think it's in the book as well, that we can lean into this universal aspect of story, and it really supports us in our drama work. Zoe, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I did have a thought, but then I got carried away with what you were saying and I forgot it.
Went back into story world.
Yeah, just I guess to say that, sometimes people will ask us, how does it work when you maybe work with a Greek myth with a group of people, maybe from 5 or 10 different language backgrounds? And I think it's probably important to make it clear that what we're trying to do when we work with these ancient stories is actually put it in a place and time that we can all share and access in, and it doesn't obviously or predominantly come from any particular cultural background, which just is to say that it's more democratically accessible that way, because we're not saying that it's set in a particular time or a place, but equally we might decide as a group that it is set in a particular time or place, but that comes through the process of the drama.
Yeah, and I suppose, Zoe, what's important probably to say here is that, and what we haven't said so far, is that as we work through the drama, and in a moment we'll give you an example of one of the stories we use and how some of the drama strategies that we use, so you can get a clearer idea of how we work. But we really conceive that space as a space of co-creators of a new story, dependent, that evolves from the pretext that we use of that story. So I think that's sort of key, that we're co-creating a new story together that has the fingerprints of everybody in that drama community, in that drama workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, this one. Okay, so Zoe and I debated whether or not we should put this slide in, and we decided to. And the reason why we did is because we like to conceptualize the space in which the drama happens. And we thought it might be relevant to just talk to this for a few minutes, to talk about how we perceive the space where the drama happens as a liminal space. And we're not alone in describing the drama space as a liminal space. Other drama educators have talked about this betwixt and between, this idea that we are in these fictional worlds playing together, and it's not like ordinary reality, even though we draw on everything that we've experienced in ordinary reality in order to create something in that space. So ostensibly, Connected is a learning language through literacy, learning language through drama program. And so the participants that we often work with are out in the ordinary world, and too, we as facilitators are out in the ordinary world, you know, looking after our food, housing, family issues, studying, working, sometimes government agencies, so all these things that require a different way of thinking than perhaps the creative way of thinking, not necessarily, but sometimes. And so we like to sort of conceptualize a space as a space where we cross a threshold as the story begins and into this imaginative space that's potent with possibilities for transformation and learning, where new knowledge is developed. And for us, the new knowledge would be language skills, it could be vocab development, confidence with oracy, talking and listening, and some writing that happens in that space. But I think what is often missing in this conversation about the liminal is the integration afterwards. And just going back to the liminal, beyond the language learning that happens in that space, Zoe and I have recognised over the 5 years of doing this that participants often comment more readily, not just on the language learning, but on the feelings that they have in this space. And what I mean by that is the general confidence that they seem to develop in that space, the sense of well-being, the enjoyment, the social connection. And there's something about that that really supports the language learning, but has some sort of revitalisation aspect. So when we're going back out into the ordinary world, there is all these sorts of things can be integrated in some way that makes a difference. There's some sort of transformation that makes a difference going forward. And so is there anything else you'd like to add to that I might have forgotten?
I think only just to agree that I think these spaces are often really hard to come by as when we become adults, that to engage in imaginative collaboration with other people, there aren't many opportunities when you become an adult to do that. And I think that there's maybe an additional sense of enjoyment when you can engage in these experiences as an adult, because that they are quite rare. And I think often if we're delivering a workshop in a space, we might have to, like this morning at Asylum Seekers Centre, actually pack up tables and move them out of the space. And I think that's often for new participants, that moment of going, oh, this is an English class, but it's not going to be the normal English class. It's going to be a bit different. And I think just even that removal of the table from the space can kind of help create this this threshold to step into. Yeah. And I think that brings us to our moment when we're going to hear a little bit of a story from Victoria.
Okay, so we've sort of been talking about the macro, if you like, you know, the nuts and bolts of Connected, how we work in that space. But we thought it would be a really good opportunity to try and give you more insight into how we work. I mean, ideally, the way Zoe and I would like to work would really be in front of you and doing this work with you, so you really get an embodied experience of what we do. So we're going to try and do that a little bit here now, where I'm going to tell you one of the stories that we use. So we have, well, Zoe, I'm not sure how many stories we've used over the last 6 years. Is it about 12? But in the book, we only have about 7 or 8.
Yeah, I think at least 12.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Zoe and I, the stories that we have used come from a lot of reading and understanding. There's a lot of stories we don't use. So this is one that we came across, knowing the context in which we work, where they're adults. And we knew that there were themes that always resonated with the groups we worked with, given that they're adults. You know, telling a version of Jack and the Beanstalk is not going to really cut it in these groups. So we just want to give you an example of one of the stories. And this story is called The Tigers Whisker. And I'm going to spend about 3 minutes telling you a version that has a lot of information in it, and then talk to you about how we break that down into a pretext and what we do when we create a pretext, and then show you some examples of how we work with that story and some participants' responses to that story to give you more insight, as I said. So I'm going to tell you the story now of The Tigers Whisker. The Tigers Whisker, the version that I'm going to tell you comes from there's a Korean version, a Japanese version, and a version told by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Her version is called The Crescent Moon Bear, but essentially it's the same story. So once there was a husband who'd been away at war for many, many, many years. And the wife had found out that he was returning home the next day. And she was so excited. She cooked and she cleaned and she cooked and she cleaned and she cooked some more, all his favourite food and meals. And when she saw the husband returning, she ran out to meet him, but he stopped at the gates of the house and turned his back to her and sat and looked into the forest. And the woman was beside herself. She begged the man to come inside, but he sat stony-faced and just looked into the distance, into the forest. She brought him out food that she had cooked, and still he did nothing. She begged him to come. She shook him. She said, "Please come inside. Let's start our life again." And in a desperate bid, she ran down to the wise woman that lived in town, Lucky. And she said, "My husband, please give me something. I want him to come inside. I wanted things to be like they were." And the wise woman looked at the wife and said, "Yeah, I can help you. I can make you a potion, easy. But I do need a special ingredient." So that ingredient is a tiger's whisker. And what you need to do is you need to go to the top of that mountain, and in that top of the mountain there's a cave, and in that cave there is a tiger, and that is the whisker I need. So the woman packed a bag and she journeyed up the mountain. And when she got to the cave where the tiger was sitting, she saw these glowing eyes at her, and she was terrified, and there was a little rumble of a growl, and she retreated and she hid behind some rocks and just looked up and peeked out and watched the tiger, and the tiger watched her. And when the tiger fell asleep, luckily she packed some raw meat in her bag, and she lay a little bit of meat at the mouth of the cave and then retreated. The tiger woke, saw the meat, saw the woman, stared at the woman, stared at the meat, ate the meat, retreated into the cave. The next day, the woman did the same thing, but this time she left the meat a little bit away from the entrance of the cave. Again, the tiger looked at the woman, looked at the food, looked at the woman again, looked at the meat, ate the meat, and went back into the cave. And this happened over and over again over days, and days turned into weeks. And then eventually, after a long period of time, the woman had managed to bring the meat all the way to where she was sitting. And she sat down and she put the meat close to her lap, and she watched as the tiger left his cave and slowly walked towards her and sat in front of her. He looked at the woman, he looked at the meat, he looked at the woman again, ate the meat, and lay down in front of the woman. And very carefully, she reached out and she plucked a tiger's whisker. The tiger looked at her and retreated back to his cave. The woman ran down that mountain as fast as she could. She went to the wise woman and she said, look, I've got the tiger's whisker. Give me the potion." And the wise woman took the tiger's whisker and threw it into the fire. And the woman was beside herself. What have you done? I have spent weeks and weeks getting that tiger whisker and you've thrown it away. You've burnt it in front of me. What are you doing? And the wise woman said, you've learned something up that mountain. You go back home now and you do what you need to do as you did up the mountain. Go back and see your husband. End of story. So that story we read and we thought, we like so much about that story, didn't we, Zoe? We liked the fact that there was a husband and wife that always really engaged our participants. We liked the fact it had some really surprising elements in the story. And so once we sort of got a feeling that this story would work, we then set about creating the pretext of the story. And so for those of us who work with pretext and drama, we know that we pair them right back. So there's a lot of spaces for the imaginative responses of the people who are going to be engaging in the drama. And so the first thing we did was remove the wall. The husband had been away for a long time, which meant in the first or second workshop, the participants could give us their suggestions about where the husband had been for 3 or 4 years or for the long time. And some of the ideas were, there had been war. Yes, he had been away for war. Some of them came up with that idea. But also that he had gone to another country to earn money to send back to the family, that he had gone off to look after a sick relative, that he had gone off to study to make the family's prospects better. And again, this is an adult audience and they're drawing participants and they're only drawing on what their experiences of the world are, that he'd gone off and had an affair and was now feeling quite sorry and wanted to reconcile with his wife. So there are many responses. So we stripped the wall, we stripped that specific aspect from it. So he's been away for a long time. The next thing we do is that Zoe and I felt a bit uncomfortable about the wise woman saying, you've learnt patience, go back now and be patient with your husband. And a lot of these traditional tales do have that moralizing that can happen. And often Zoe, I know I'm speaking for you and you can, add your beautiful thinking around this, that we decided then to really focus on the courage of the woman and really expand that part of the story. What obstacles did she face in the first instance of getting up that mountain? And we removed the meat. The woman had to work out a strategy to actually get the Tigers Whisker, which then in that workshop, which is about the 4th or 5th workshop, there were lots of ways that the participants thought the woman could get the Tigers Whisker. So that's the sort of thing that we do when we create a pretext. Leave lots of spaces and remove some specifics to allow participants engagement with the story and to start making the story our own based on the original concept of the story. Zoe.
That's, a great explanation. I also wanted to add that I think by taking out a moralizing aspect that sometimes sneaks in at the end of these stories, it lets us as participants and co-creators sit in ambiguity. And certainly with this story in particular, the tension between the husband and wife at the center of the story, even when she returns, is something that really can elicit some strong engagement, strong discussions and opinions. So that can be a really rich space. We wanted to talk through just a few drama strategies that, again, lots of people will be familiar with, but talk about how we use these in the Connected program to kind of hopefully give you a sense of what it is like in the space. And the first of those drama strategies is artifact. So using a range of objects or images that are connected to the story. And we would typically use this strategy in the first workshop. And this is just a photograph of some of the artifacts that we use for the Tigers Whisker. And part of the process of that is just sharing the objects and looking at them closely, naming them, which is an important part for vocabulary development, of course, and then just actually looking at these objects. And what we always marvel at is that as humans, we instinctively want to make meaning. And there's something about seeing a group of objects that that may not comfortably sit together that engages people in wanting to make a story to connect these objects. So we found that this is a really lovely way of introducing the idea that in this liminal space there is no right and wrong, and there is no roadmap for how these objects do connect with each other to tell a story. Would you agree, Victoria?
Absolutely. And I think that lamp, we use that often. It does hark to the ancient nature of a lot of these tales, and it really does. It really does seem to, not only the story, but that lamp tends to really evoke natural storytelling.
Yes, yeah, one of our favourites.
And it's that distancing, it's that fictional, it's sort of another time, another otherworldly aspect to it. And it does create some really good personal stories too connected to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's often a way that we might instigate the drama process, is just by looking at some artifacts and starting to create stories together. Another strategy that we often use in workshops is something that we called language share. And it began really as a strategy that would support people in comprehension. So we would look at a central word or a theme for a workshop, in this case, courage, and this was part of the Tigers Whisker, and then invite participants to teach us this word in another language. And so as part of that process, you know, writing it on the board, repeating the word for everyone, teaching pronunciation, and really letting participants be the teacher in that space and the expert. And then the next stage of a language share is actually to embody the concept. So what does courage look like in our bodies and our faces? What gestures can we make that show courage? And then moving around the circle. And that is a lovely opportunity for participants to try languages that are not their own, that maybe aren't, often they don't necessarily just go to English either. They want to try to say the word in other languages in the space. So that's become a real mainstay of some of our workshops, because I think it not only supports comprehension around the central idea of what the story that we're looking at, but it also really encapsulates what we are trying to facilitate, in that it's a space that we're all learners and we all have knowledge and expertise to share with each other. Do you have anything to add to that?
I just think again, it just, and I think this is really clear in school drama, and Robin Ewing has been instrumental in that philosophy for school drama, that we're a community of learners. Whilst we might facilitate that we're learning too, and that they can be teachers, and we're sitting in the circle learning this new language with them, aren't we, as well? But we're sitting outside the drama, we're always in it, and it's lovely for us to experiment and be taught these different ways of saying things as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also so humbling to realise how many languages are in a room, particularly working with adults, where many participants will speak 3, 4 or 5 different languages, that it's quite an overt way of acknowledging all of the knowledge that people are bringing into the space. The next kind of strategy, and I guess it's not even calling it a strategy is probably too specific, but Victoria, did you want to tell us a little bit about how creative writing?
So often with a pretext, whilst we might have a bit of an ending that should be that we're intending to explore by the 6th workshop, we really need to build on what has happened in the previous workshops. So often the ending is quite different. But what I really like about this writing and roll activity, which usually happens towards the end, even for people who know the language, sometimes writing a fictional story can be quite difficult. I know that's true when I was a child and even as a young adult, you know, writing a story out of your head. But what happens often is that because of the drama and the process of exploring this text and embodying the world and creating this new story together, that the writing becomes a very engaged and participants are really motivated to write in roll. Again, writing in roll liberates the person from having to write a composition about or a report about what happened. So there's still the imaginative basis of writing in a roll. What I really like about this one is that the participant talks also about some of the obstacles that they had to face as they went up to, the woman had to face, writing in roll as the husband, to the husband as the wife, had to face as she went up the mountain, a big snake and a big spider, and how she felt. And then her strategy, the strategy that actually played out in the drama, that the woman had a guitar in her bag and she played a song to the tiger, and the tiger and her swayed gently together, and she was able to gain the trust of the tiger, for want of a better way of explaining it, and pluck the whisker then. But what I really like about this writing and roll and what happened in this workshop is that she asked the husband then for help because she got lost. She got lost on the way down the mountain. So we didn't even have the burning of the tiger's whisker. It became something else. Zoe, did you want to add to that?
This example is from a student at MTC Australia, actually, and I know we have a few people from MTC joining us for this webinar, and I think it's worth saying that a lot of the discoveries that we've made along the way, and this being one of them, was really supported in this case by the teachers at MTC Australia, who really encourage their students to kind of harness this enthusiasm and engagement they were feeling and the connection to the story to put it into creative writing tasks, which could then feed into the next drama workshop. So it's really been a process of collaboration with our colleagues at our partner organisations as well.
And I think that's true, particularly of the writing. It's usually a follow-up activity. It's not something you need to do in such an this would take quite a long period of time to write. So it's usually a follow-up activity that we suggest. There is some writing that happens in class, but not to this extent.
And we were going to talk a little bit more about the post-text now, which is, as we were saying before, process-based drama is really focused on the process. There is no performance or presentation at the end, but what does emerge from connected workshops is what we've just started calling a post-text, which really is the new version of that folk tale or myth that we have co-created together over those 6 or 7 weeks. And the story is totally unique to that group, will never be repeated in the exact same way again, because it is the result of everyone's imaginative contributions that have been woven through from week to week to come up with this version of the story. And we've had the privilege of working with a story like the Tigers Whisker with a number of different groups in different settings over the years. And every post-text is completely different because it is unique to that group of individuals who have engaged in the process.
Yeah, it's like a gift of the experience.
Yeah.
And going back to the liminal, it's often the surprise elements, and there's something that we can take away from the experience while the focus is on the process. It's a lovely gift of story that everybody can have at the end. Where I remember the first time we did that, Zoe, the participants were reading it and going, that's my bit, that's what I did in the drama. There's a lovely sense of ownership, and it's something tangible, because often as drama practitioners, as most of you would know, it's such an ephemeral experience, and it's lovely to have a gift at the end, I think, to take away.
Yeah, and I think especially when we are working with participants who are at the beginning of the process of learning English, having a story which could be 1 to 2 pages by the time we get to the end, that they deeply understand, because they have embodied all of these moments and they've made decisions along the way, and the story and that piece of text is something that they deeply understand, I think is a real, it can be a really special moment for participants at the end. We just wanted to share a little example from the Tigers Whisker.
So the black writing there is, apart from some of it, actually the woman made a special dish. That's actually not part of the pretext. Anyway, so the blue writing is some of the contributions from the participants. So you can see here that we did an exercise in the very beginning, a drama strategy that really looked at cooking this amazing food for the husband who was about to return. And these are some of the ingredients that went into the recipe. I haven't cooked this yet, but I think Zoe's about to try it out as a recipe. And then you can see here also too, the tiger smelled it. So in this instance, they did have some meat, because often participants, even though we don't say it in the pretext, will come up with the idea of trying to feed the tiger to get the tiger's whisker. But he didn't touch it. And then she played him music, and he smiled and swayed and listened to the music. And the wife approached the tiger, reaching out for the whisker, etc. So you just get a sense of, this is just 2 small, very sections of the post-text, but it gives you a sense of how their contributions contribute to the final written post-text that they then take away as a gift.
We really wanted to conclude or get towards the ending of this webinar by sharing a reflection from a participant, because really I don't think we have been able to articulate the program in a way that comes anywhere close to this quote. Would you like to read it out, Victoria?
Okay. So we were doing a workshop on Atlanta. It was Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay. That was the story we were using for this. And at the end, one participant said this so emphatically that Zoe and I have returned over and over again to this to remind us this is what drama does. So I have been learning English for 4 years. Grammar. Should be a few commas in there. I cannot memorize grammar. I think it is a good idea to learn English naturally with our bodies, like we learn our mother tongue with people. This is a good idea to learn through drama. Refugees have a lot of trauma from their past. They are struggling. They cannot read mindfully. They are always thinking. This is a good idea to learn with laughing. No more stress.
Great.
So I think that's it.
Yeah.
We can't say anything more. I think we really should have just done a presentation reading that and moved on.
Yeah, we're done. We did want to mention that during multiple lockdowns, I can't even remember when we collaborated writing a book together, which really just tries to share some of the process dramas and stories that we've worked with over the years on the Connected program, and present them in a way that might be useful for other people who are also working in these spaces. So just to let you know that book is out there. There is some more information on Sydney Theatre Company's website. If anyone has any kind of questions. We have time, I think, to answer a few questions now, but also feel free to get in touch with me on that email address. I don't think we have any questions yet, but thank you, Carla, for your comment. It's
I
nice.
wonder if we might just invite people, anyone who feels they can turn their camera on, please go ahead and do so right now, because that way Zoe and Victoria can see, you know, that you're there and we can see any questions come up, or you're most welcome to put questions in the chat too, and I'll read them out if that is helpful.
Hi,
Hi, Zoe. Hi. Yeah, I've got a messy room in the back room. Yeah, but anyway, usually on Teams, I can put a different back room on. But anyway, yeah, I was just going to point out, or I put in the chat earlier, and maybe it's in your book already, but it's not just for our, you know, students who are migrants and from a different language background, but it was also really valuable for, if you recall, our Liverpool class, who were more sort of, you know, native speakers, so to speak, but, you know, had literacy and numeracy barriers, and that's why they were in the class. And it was a bit more of a sci-fi context, and they were, you know, doing like blogs and stuff in terms of their post-text around, you know, computer skills and blah, blah, blah. So it's just, yeah, it's just a beginning, you know, and it can go anywhere. Yeah.
I think, Carla, that's a really good comment, because whilst Zoe and I have used these in adult learning contexts, we also understand that they could be easily applied to other contexts as well.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, just something that, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's got so much potential. Yeah.
Yeah, and that process drama that Carla mentioned that we explored with a group in Liverpool was Mary Ellery, which is a
that's the
drama, that was developed by Carol Miller and Juliana Saxton, and would recommend, if anyone's interested, looking into their work as well.
Yeah, we've got so many, like I just did a little list. So Pandora's Box, Magic Paintbrush, One Grain of Rice, Tigers Whisker, Golden Fleece, Mary Ellery, Green Children, and our pilot was The Arrival, right? So so many things. Yeah, exactly. And so much learning, along the way. I think it just got better and better. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Carla.
Some really lovely comments. Thanks for your comments, everybody in chat as well. It's good that it.
Hello, Victoria and Zoe. That was wonderful. Thank you. Lovely to see you both, and I'm so looking forward to seeing you when you come up to Armidale at the end of this month. And that was wonderful to hear, because we didn't, when I came for the training we didn't really talk that much about Connected, did we? We only sort of touched on it very slightly, so it was wonderful. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. That was great. And I'm hoping to come down for the book launch, which will be fantastic.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions? When Zoe and I give these presentations, we're so aware of the vast, all the things that we have to really try and focus down just to some specifics. Otherwise, we just get off track. So we then wonder if we've actually said everything we needed to say as well. So,
well, I would like to ask for a little more detail on an aspect, if you don't mind. You've talked about the contributions people make. Your images, though, show a lot of people sort of wearing bits and bobs and being up on their feet. Are you actually doing sort of role-played improv bits of the stories? And if so, could you tell us a little bit about how that works with people with such varying language capabilities at the time?
That is a great question, Anna, and so good that you raised it, because we didn't actually mention that improvisation and role play is a huge part of what happens in a workshop. And we also often will use teacher in role. So one of us or another teaching artist will take on a role in the drama. that also relates to a role that the participants take on. So it is a big part of it. And I'd say, you know, there's so many different ways that you can work with improvisation and role play. And really we try and provide plenty of support, and part of that is often us being in role as well to make sure that participants feel safe in that improvisational space. So in some cases with groups, it might be a whole group improvisation, and it's quite complicated and people are taking on different roles and sharing different opinions. But equally, there's been times when, for example, we make a magic potion together and we might work with a rhyme or a sentence starter to really help participants contribute to the role play without putting them on the spot. Would you say, Victoria?
Yeah, I think often, because we're very engaged in the drama, we're in the drama always with the participants, and often we'll take on a role, teaching in role, which helps focus, and we can feed dialogue back and forwards. And then we might take off the prop, the crown, the shawl, whatever it is, and give it to a participant to then take on that role that we were taking on. So in a way we can model, if there's a link, both through modeling, that's quite an effective strategy. We use lots of different drama strategies: hot seat, conscience alley, or advice circle. There's always a lot of friends in these stories that give advice to the main character, and that really creates a lot of great conversation and spontaneous language. So we always love it when debates arise in the story, and there's tension between different opinions, and the participants are really struggling to find the right words, and Googling them so they can get their opinion across. So I think, yeah, we use most of the drama strategies, but modify them and model them and really go slowly. And then week after week, there's more confidence, there's more it's sort of an easier experience, isn't it?
Yeah, more vocabulary to draw on as well.
I think Julie might have a question there.
Well, I was just going to say that when we did the training, one of the things that I loved the most was doing the village circles, where we went around and we all took on a personality from the village, and then we were able to talk about the story in that. I thought that was great.
Yeah. So in the book, thanks, Julie, in the book, I don't know how many drama strategies we've listed. Is it 15?
I have no idea either.
Something like that. We list everything, all the warm-up activities, and give a really good description of each of those and where we use them in different dramas. And then a step-by-step outline of each workshop for the 6 different workshop series in each story. So yeah, it's a very practical book.
And the video of this webinar will go up on Friday, so I'll make sure there's a link to the book in the description underneath that if you need help finding.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah, it's been lovely to see some familiar faces and names. And yeah, I'm just impressed that you came along to listen and share with us.
Question in the chat.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Zoe. I think
so the question is about when you're working with refugee students who might suffer from PTSD. I think there's a couple of things in that. First of all, that is, one of the wonderful things about working with fictional and imaginative stories is that we really intentionally use the distance created between our real world and the world of the story, where magical things can happen. That's a really intentional thing that we've done in Connected. It isn't about inviting or creating a space for people to share their personal stories. As teaching artists, we're not qualified to do that work. It's very sensitive and delicate work, and we really believe in the power of being in that imaginative and liminal space. And secondly, I think that's a really important part of a theatre company partnering with organisations who have expertise and deep knowledge of the participants and the students in the room. So as a teaching artist going into a space once a week, there's no way that I can know everyone's histories and things that, you know, might be difficult to deal with. So that's why we work so closely with our partners, because we definitely want to be facilitating a space that is joyful and is really rooted in the imaginative world. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think you said it really well. Yeah, I think that's completely.
Yeah. But thanks for the question.
I know it's a tricky one. Yeah.
We may have reached the end of people's questions then. Just in the absence of Michael's presence and poor Robin's voice, she's there, but she's keeping quiet. I just would like to extend the thanks of the Create Centre to Zoe and Victoria for that extraordinarily inspiring and content-rich, ideas-rich presentation. There's so much to build on there, and I'm very much looking forward to looking at your book for that. The link to our YouTube channel is in the chat, and as I mentioned, the video will go up on Friday. So let's do the round of applause-y thing. Thank you very much. And if you want to unmute and applaud. So thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Zoe and Victoria, before we sign off?
Look, thank you for having us in the Create Centre as the webinar. It's been a really enjoyable experience. Every time we do it, Zoe, I say we, but I don't want to speak for you, but I learn more and more about the process, because as practitioners, it's very hard sometimes to really think about what it is, how does it work? Mm-hmm. So these experiences are great to really keep thinking about the value of work like this.
Magnificent. Oh, Marina, did you have a comment, question?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm from ATESOL Council, New South Wales ATESOL Council, and I loved your webinar, and we've had Marjorie Hertzberg and Tori write about using drama, and this is something else again, and we'll certainly put an article in our next newsletter about it with all those links and a link probably to the recorded webinar, if that's okay.
Thank you, Marina.
Marvellous.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah,
it was great.
Thanks, Marina.
That's okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along, and thanks again to Victoria and Zoe. That was extraordinary, and we'll see you all at the next event. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.